T-Mobile's the leader in 5G. So 4, you'll be able to unleash the fastest 5G speeds in more places with your new phone. And 5, with your new Galaxy S21 on T-Mobile, there's crystal clear video calls, mobile gaming with low latency, lightning fast downloads. Oh wait, that's way more than 5 great reasons to get the Galaxy S21 free at T-Mobile.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 8th, 2021. Ground of Deportes. Bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if I'm going to go through depression or what, but football season is finally over, so I got 2 options left. Let's pick up a few more drinks and start watching hockey if I want to see something mixed up. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders.
Yeah, first responders are good. Hockey's okay, not as good as football, but it'll get you through, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and B6 seats, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, love pausing. I think the Kansas City Chiefs, they were on pausing. They wish they could find a lake to jump in. It's all fair in love and war, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping people, especially veterans, and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Charlton, as we move more and more into 2021, our veterans crisis has not ceased here in America. We lose over 24 veterans a day to suicide, a very horrific number that this country can't seem to put its thumb on, Charlton. I understand everybody's preoccupied with COVID-19 and how devastating that has been, but our veterans have been devastated for decades in this country from this disease called suicide. And the government needs to find more of a way to stem the tide of that, Charlton. We give out our concerns and our condolences to those veterans who have fallen that way.
Yep.
But we also wanted to stop, Charlton. This is the reason we give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. I know what we do is just a small tidbit, Charlton, of what can be done by all Americans in recognizing our veterans.
Yeah, I love doing our part, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely help our veterans get some help. Make sure you do that because we're coming up on it's Black History Month. I want to make sure that no one really talks about it when they say veterans. There was a time when all of our armies and our military was segregated, so I really want to make sure people reach out to people who need help. Also, I'm very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run King Barry Bonds. And when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting their properties back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And you can definitely get some help with real estate. Most of our loans are underwritten by Quicken Loans on the wholesale side. They actually had a lot of commercials for Super Bowl 55. Really appreciate that. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports all over the universe. Just like God says, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Big C, when people say you're missing football, I think the Kansas City Chiefs, they're missing football too. Were they sleepwalking in Super Bowl 55, Big C, your thoughts?
You know, the Super Bowl 55 showed the devastation of injuries, Charlton, and how it can affect you in the biggest game of the year. I mean, kudos to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They did what they went out there to do, Charlton. Everybody said they would score 31 points, and that's what they did. Their offense showed up, and their defense especially showed up in shutting down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Yeah, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, when he came out of the tunnel, and they showed that he didn't look the same fiery Patrick Mahomes that he had, even when he hurt his toe against Cleveland, and he ran down. I guess he's had his toe and also had his neck hurt against Cleveland. He ran down the steps to go into the locker room, but coming out of the tunnel, it just seemed like he was dazed and confused. You know, some of my friends, they believe that things worked out the way the country wanted them to work out. I do appreciate seeing good football, but Kansas City didn't show up with good football. It's as if guys were trying to drop passes. When you see Travis Kelce dropping passes right in two hands, you see Tyreek Hill dropping a pass in the touchdown. Then they had a running back, had the ball hit his, I guess the balls hit their face mask. That meant it went through their hands, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's what you're taught as a receiver, is to catch the ball with your hands.
Yeah.
But there were two touchdowns that were dropped by Kansas City Chiefs. Bernard Robinson missed one, as well as Tyreek Hill. Charlton, the ball hit him in the face mask in the end zone. I mean, those are the type of plays that dictate the outcome of a game, but also the stupid penalties by the Kansas City Chiefs and the bad coaching by Andy Reid calling the timeout. Couple timeout with less than a minute to go, you know, right before the half ended, Charlton, and allowed Tampa to go down and score their third touchdown.
Yeah.
So I don't think that anybody in Kansas City was in sync as far as this game goes.
Yeah, I do believe that Andy Reid, you know, number one, congratulations to Tampa Bay. You did what you went there to do. You went home and you won a game. And I don't know what happened with Andy Reid's son and the car crash, and I don't know the situation of those young children that were in the hospital. I just hope that everything's going to work out okay. But I know they had to weigh in the mind of the whole Kansas City Chiefs team. But I still want to give Tampa Bay credit for winning by the score 31-9. So it's all about touchdown Tom Brady, Big C. And when you think about it, being the 199th pick in the 2000 NFL Draft, what Tom Brady was able to do for guys that believe in numbers and prop betting and all that stuff, is sometimes how the universe will line up for you. By the numbers, Tom Brady is leaving a lot of star players behind. At 43 years old, 4 plus 3 is 7. He won his 7th championship on February 7th. He was the 7th quarterback drafted in the 2000 draft, the 199th pick, Big C. There's something called Gematria. A lot of my Christian friends get into that numerology and all that stuff, and it happened to be down in Tampa. And he even went so far as to say it was how the pirates, how they took and, you know, massacred the Native Americans. If you look at the logos on both sides of the helmet, I mean, that is what it is. But I do know something that I saw in this game, and I would love to get your thoughts. 31-9. No one would ever expect that the Kansas City Chiefs would only score 9 points. And that's why some of my friends who are cynical, they think, hey, this is some home cooking going on. I know you've had some home cooking before, Big C. There were some penalties thrown in this game, or called in this game, and it favored greatly Tampa Bay at home. You know, home cooking. Tampa Bay had a lot more favorability by the officiating, even though you don't want to blame the officials, Big C. There were a lot more officiating that went in the favor of Tampa Bay. I think there was 11 penalties by Kansas City and only 4 by Tampa, and 2 of those 4 penalties happened in the fourth quarter with less than 5 minutes to go, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the officiating at times was egregious, Charlton, when you look at a couple of interference calls, especially the one on Matthews when they threw it in the end zone with the ball landed well outside the end zone. Matter of fact, up against the stands.
The stands.
That's one that's an uncatchable ball, but the official threw the flag regardless. In that situation, also the one on Breland up the sideline against Evans.
Oh, that
also.
was a joke.
But there was a couple of situations where I thought that the officials turned an eye.
Yeah.
When Mahomes was sacked on a play, and Sue came in one time
Hit him
and
in
threw
the
a
helmet.
forearm up against his helmet,
Yep.
and the official didn't call that. That's the same type of play that they hit Chris Jones with 3 years ago in Kansas City on Tom Brady.
Yeah.
There was a few situations in the game when Matthews got the unsportsmanlike penalty on the call.
Yeah.
Normally you call that on the second person. Tom Brady pursued him. He chased him. He taunted him. And Tom Brady didn't get the penalty. At the least, it should have been a double.
Yeah.
But Tom Brady got a pass in that situation because Tom Brady wouldn't do anything like that. And the official let Tom Brady get away with that. All of those things are momentum swings. And when you have a game of this magnitude, this is a game that you ought to, officiate with robots. Because sometimes the human error that occurs in a game of this magnitude, and the team that gets penalized the most on defense is generally going to lose in a big game, and that's what happened to Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City had 120 yards in penalties. 120 yards in penalties, Big C, and that's in the Super Bowl. That's where you're supposed to leave the handkerchiefs in your pocket, and oftentimes those penalties, Big C, they happen after the play, especially the interception. That Tom Brady threw the interception. It was deflected off of a player's hand, and then the Kansas City, it was Matthews, they actually intercepted it. And then about 10 minutes later, the referee said there was a pass interference on Kansas City. There's no pass interference on a tip ball, then the play becomes live. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, every situation where you look at when Tampa Bay scored, they scored off of defensive penalties. They kept drives alive in those situations, Charlton. And, we can always sit up and be the Monday morning quarterback and scrutinize the officials. I think they have a conscience that they have to deal with in that scenario. Charlton, did we do too much to take the other team out of the game, or did we officiate the game fairly? Yeah. So, that's always going to come down to the officials.
Yeah, there's a great movie that everybody should see. It's by Clive Owens. And it's called Inside Job or Inside Man. It was an inside job, Big C. It was about a bank robbery. Bank robbers, like Jackie, the late Jackie Gleason. But it was an inside job. And I know people believe whatever they want to believe. But the NFL is a $15 billion a year industry. They're going to make their money. In the first quarter alone, Kansas City went down and scored first, Big C. They were up 3-0. It was the 62nd straight game where they had actually had a lead in the game, Big C, but also happening in the first quarter, which is uncharacteristic. Kansas City, they had 6 straight incompletions by touchdown Patrick Mahomes. At the end of the first quarter, by a guy who just got a $500 million contract or close to it, and he was 2 of 8 for 9 yards in the first quarter. No one can tell him. Of course, we had the heel drop, the touchdown catch, a 40-yarder that was dropped. They had so many things that just looked like they were a Pop Warner football team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it was that, Charlton. You got to give credit to the Tampa Bay defense as well as defense coordinator Todd Bowles, who understood what he needed to do to take it away from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, you got to realize, since the first time that these teams played, Kansas City went up 17 points in the first quarter against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Since then, Charlton, Tampa Bay has outscored Kansas City by 50 points. So Todd Bowles made adjustments to what Patrick Mahomes was doing after the first half of that game that they met a couple months ago. And so you got to give credit to the Tampa Bay defense. They figured it out, playing cover 2 with Shell up top in the secondary, not allowing those lanes to be opened up. But you also got to understand the greatness of Tampa Bay linebackers' defense.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay physically had the best team in the Super Bowl. We all talk about the quarterbacks and what they do. Everybody gives all the praise to the quarterback and the offensive skill position. But Tampa Bay had more athletes on their roster than what Kansas City did. And those athletes showed up big. When you look at the play of the linebackers in this game for Tampa Bay, they took away everything underneath that Kansas City was accustomed to doing. Travis Kelce didn't have free releases off the line of scrimmage. Tyreek Hill could not come underneath on those crossing routes because those linebackers got depth. You got to give credit to the linebackers of Tampa Bay. We're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes. We're going to talk about Tom Brady. Yes, they get all the accolades when you win and lose. But those linebackers made the difference. If you look at the linebackers for Kansas City, they were not making the plays that the linebackers for Tampa were making.
Yep. It's like they were told, don't touch them, we're playing flag football. I'm just saying, I got some cynical friends. I guess they bet a lot more money on the game than they should have, because one guy called me and he was giving me some numbers, and I understand. I look at both sides of, especially guys that gamble, because some guys gamble for a living, and some of them live very well. But some of them thought that they were bamboozled, and it's all fair and love and war. Brady was 21 of 29, 201 yards and 3 touchdowns. Touchdown Patrick Mahomes, and you wouldn't even think he threw the ball 49 times, Big C. Patrick Mahomes, he threw the ball he was 26 of 49, 270 yards, had the 2 interceptions, and he rushed for 33 yards. And of course, one of the interceptions at the end, they would actually hit a player, and it just bounced off. But those things happen. But I want to ask your thoughts, because number one on Jim Nantz, it's the 100th time that he's broadcast the game with the great Tom Brady all the way from New England and then down to Tampa. So congratulations on Jim Nantz being at the scene of the crime, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the biggest difference in this game, Charlton, you got to look at Kansas City that had to shuffle their offensive line.
Yeah.
They had 3 starters in this game that were out of position.
Yeah.
And 3 of those starters, Charlton, 2 of them were the offensive tackles.
Yep.
People don't realize that when you look at this game and all the rushing, Patrick Mahomes outran everybody in this football game, probably even his wide receiver.
Yeah.
On snaps alone, Charlton, and running for his life, Patrick Mahomes ran for 531 yards trying to get passes off in this football game.
Yeah.
You think about that. When a quarterback has to run 531 yards just trying to pass the ball, that means he's running for his life the entire game. He never got an opportunity to be comfortable sitting in the pocket. And that was the major difference. I mean, he was tired playing this game. He was running all over the field trying to get away passes. But a couple of passes that he threw, especially the one when he was horizontal and threw the ball and hit Williams in the face in the end zone, and Williams dropped the ball because it went through his hands, hit him in the face mask. When you got a quarterback that's doing as much as Patrick Mahomes is doing in trying to hoist his team to a victory, and the moving parts are not working as hard, you got to feel frustration if you're Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if you're grading out the quarterback in this game, you got to give Grady a B in grade because, he only had 200 yards in passing.
Yeah.
But you got to give Patrick Mahomes basically a D because he could never get started in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that play that you just described so well, Big C, when he rolled around and he was going to his right and he was actually going down on the ground, and then he was able, I think that move is called the Matrix. He twisted his body while he was in the air and threw like a baseball player trying to throw somebody out sliding into second base, and he was almost sideways when he threw the ball. Not only was he nearly sideways when he threw the ball at least some 30 yards in the air, and it was on a dart, and it should have been a touchdown. I don't think I've ever seen that. Deshaun Watson had a play like that against the Raiders at one time, but if anyone sees that play, there could be a statue of Patrick Mahomes when he's finished playing in Kansas City, not of him standing upright. But have you ever seen a quarterback in the air, on his side, flying in the air, and then through the ball? Big, so your thoughts?
Well, every pass that can be made by a quarterback, you got to look at Patrick Mahomes in his brief career in the NFL and see him make those passes, Charlton. I mean, he's a guy that we love to enjoy watching.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people put too much on his shoulders thinking that he can carry everything by himself. But the moving parts around him have to hold up also, Charlton. Yes, he had one of the worst games of his pro career, but as also his receivers had one of the worst games of their receiving career.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Hill and Kelsey together, they had 206 combined yards, but where was the yardage at when it was needed? There was not much run after the catch.
Yeah.
When these receivers were catching the balls, they could not get open. And you never saw Tyreek Hill, other than the one pass that he dropped in the end zone, really threatening the secondary of Tampa Bay.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more cynical than you, Big C. I think we do real talk, so you don't have to agree with me. And sometimes I don't even agree with me, but I do listen to people who live in the gambling business. Not that I gamble, but I don't think there's any way in the world that off all this buildup and all this talk of Black Lives Matter and the administration we just came out of with this insurrection, just happened to be down in Florida where it all happened. I don't think there's any way, when we talk about black men can't get jobs, we talked about the black quarterbacks that have gone on and beaten white guys in the Super Bowl. I think only Doug Williams, and that was with Washington, and he beat not Tom Brady, but the Denver Broncos, and John Elway made him look very bad. Hadn't seen a job again. He couldn't get a job again in the NFL. And Russell Wilson, when they made, Peyton Manning look bad in New York, I think it was 43-8 when the first snap went over Manning's head, and the Seattle Seahawks blew them out. They came back and had him throw the football instead of giving it to beast mode against Brady. You might say I'm silly, but I'm just saying, Cam Newton, the MVP against Peyton Manning in Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco, and that game was a lot like what I just saw, that somebody got to these guys, and they didn't play the way they got to be MVPs of the league. This is like somebody playing pickup ball, Big C, and I believe this. Cam Newton was never the same. I think Patrick Mahomes had a lot left in him, but I think gamblers know a lot more than people give them credit for, and those guys were not trying to win that football game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you have a valid point, Charlton, when you look at that perspective, how, the alleged greatest white quarterbacks of all time have gotten a break and opportunity against superstar young black quarterbacks in the biggest game on the biggest stage.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to look at directions and think about gambling when it comes to sports. I mean, we all think about that. But also, like I said, I got to give respect to Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator of Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the game plan in the last 6 quarters of what he's done to the Kansas City Chiefs offense, that's what you got to go back and take a look at.
Yeah.
I understand your perspective on quarterbacks and gambling, but you got to give some respect to Todd Bowles, defensive coordinator, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And look at what the Kansas City Chiefs offense has done productivity-wise in the last 6 quarters that he has coached against them.
Yeah. No, Todd Bowles, would you imagine that's the same guy that the New York Jets said, "You're fired"? The Jets fired him. They didn't want to give him a chance to build a team, and they've been singing at the bottom of the pool ever since, Big C. They got rid of a man that everybody's praised. And again, my thoughts are just real talk. I got a lot of people that talk to that I respect, and when they're telling me that game was about some funny business, some fishy business, some funny business was going on in that game, Big C. Tom Brady's finished with 600 and is 64 touchdown passes combined. There's just a lot of things going on with numbers. But I want to ask you another thought, too. And Todd Bowles did his thing. But he's not going to get called for a head coaching job. Tampa's in position to be in this thing again next year because they are a very, very good football team. But I believe what some of my bookie friends have told me, this game was for the guys who were suckers and put down a lot of money on somebody covering them. But that's just my opinion from what I hear. I'm not a gambler, so I don't know. But I know that you know football, and it wouldn't be the first time that somebody was told, like Bruce Willis was told in Pulp Fiction, when Ben Rames said, "Your butt goes down in the 4th round." And Bruce Willis didn't go down. He saw what happened to him. That's the movie Pulp Fiction with the great Sam Jackson. But I got to ask you, there was a punter for the Kansas City Chiefs. Not only did he get a snap, and then he dropped the ball on the ground, and he punted the ball, and they got a good stop on Tampa, and they called a flag. Okay? So they made him kick it again. And this time he shanks a 25-yarder out of bounds. Big C, you can't tell me NFL football, this guy's a rookie. If he's a rookie, he's pretty good to be a rookie playing in the NFL. I'm telling you, something was fishy with that game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Tommy Thompson had 2 punts, Charlton, that was under par for him. I mean, his best punt was when he dropped the ball and he kicked it 56 yards, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And the next punt, after that, after the penalty, I think he only got 26 yards out of it.
Yeah.
He had another punt that was 36 yards in the game, Charlton. So it was out of character as far as him not being able to boot the ball cleanly down the field. I mean, there's a lot of tangibles that you look at in the game. I mean, when a team loses and a lot of people expect to win, they're always going to come back and start those days. It's the bookies, it's the gambling. But you also got to look at this, Charlton, that 53 players have to be complacent in a situation like that. Did they talk to the offensive tackles and tell them to, look, don't block for Mahomes, let him run around and not be able to throw the ball? Because I think those offensive tackles were more important than any punter in the game. Because when your quarterback has to run for 531 yards just to try to get the pass off, that's a lot more yards than any punter is punting for in a Super Bowl. That, to me, is the most troubling point when I look at it. And you can look at it, and the bookies can look at it and say, well, you know, certain nefarious things happen. But when the quarterback can never get comfortable in the pocket, and even when he was throwing passes, he was trying to have to creep through defensive linemen, Charlton, maze his way through just to get passes off. He never sit back in the pocket and was truly comfortable in this game. And so I think that the offensive line was more of an impact than what people want to think. When you got three guys in the game that were not used to playing in the position that they were playing, and one of them was a first-time starter this season, I look at that being at a test more than anything else. And you have to look. Tampa Bay really didn't even have to blitz these guys. They just came with four-man pressure 90% of the time.
You know what's interesting? There was a commentator, a former quarterback, I think it was Boomer Esiason, on the halftime show. And I'm telling you, I know a lot of bookies, but I don't do the business. But sometimes I'll see how they live. It's like hot and cold. Some of them live very well, some of them don't. But when Boomer on halftime show did something that no commentator, I don't think, has ever done since Jimmy the Greek Snyder. He said the officials are making too much of a rule. They're getting involved in the game too much. I mean, Jimmy the Greek Snyder had his own ways. That's why they kicked him off the TV show. But sometimes when you listen, and I don't have a dog in the game, Big C, but when you listen to people, sometimes they're telling your audience or they're telling the bookies which way to prop bet. I mean, it's just, have you ever heard a commentator say to the officials that they're calling too many fouls? He's saying the officials can't hear him, but the prop bet guys can hear him. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I've heard that many times before, Charlton, and I've stated that at the beginning of our broadcast that the officials were too involved in the game. This is the biggest game of the year. You got to swallow a whistle every now and then. And with those little ticky-tack calls that you're making as an official, they go on both sides of the ball, Charlton. You can call them at any time. But when you're only calling them against one team, Charlton, that shows that it's an egregious act being done by the officials. These are supposed to be the best of the NFL officials when you come to this game. You know, and I was thinking, you know, earlier in the year, the NFL did a game with all African-American officials. Why don't they do that during the Super Bowl? Because it's Black History Month. Do that with all black officials, Charlton, and see what the integrity of the game comes out to be at that point.
That's why oftentimes they won't do it, but it's all fair and love and war. I'm so fascinated by some of the things that I heard about. Now, Big C, this is something that I disagreed with you about this last year before it started, but you were right about this. And when I was saying that Brady doesn't have the same arm, and he doesn't, but he still has a good enough arm because his receivers are absolutely amazing. But think about this. The man is a GOAT for a reason. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. These guys weren't even on the field on the team last year. Brady accounted for 3 touchdowns. Gronkowski accounted for 2. You had Fournette accounted for 1. And then Brown accounted for 1. Big C, that's 4 players. Plus the kicker, there are 4 players, actually 5, that were not on the team last year. And just like Gronk said, and just like Antonio Brown said, they said they came there because of Brady. What did New England mess up? But 4 guys, 5 guys actually, and they all scored, and they said they came because of Tom Brady. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, Ryan Suckup actually was in the Super Bowl last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's gotten back-to-back Super Bowl rings, as well as Shady McCoy, who was with the Kansas City Chiefs last year. You know, I don't know if they came there just because of Brady, Charlton. They came there because of opportunity. Gronkowski came there because of Brady. They brought in Antonio Brown because nobody else would touch him. That's the reason why Antonio Brown was there. Everybody was worried about suspension from the league. Plus, they were already padded at receiver. You know, so when you look at those things, I'm going to say Gronkowski came there because of Brady, because that's the only quarterback that he played with. Leonard Fournette, you know, he just wanted to stay in Florida. I mean, he lived there for 4 years prior to getting released by Jacksonville, so he wanted to stay there and go to a team that was already set. I mean, when you look at the talent that's in Tampa Bay, the talent that's in Tampa Bay didn't show up because Tom Brady was there. You got to look at their general manager who drafted and signed the free agents who came there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's built that team. This team basically is the same talent that was there last year. The reason why Gronk is playing because O.J. Howard got hurt earlier in the year, but they used 3 different tight ends in this game. Gronk just happened to catch the touchdown. So, you know, when you're looking at the running back aspect, you know, Fournette came in and boosted Ronald Jones out of a starting job. So when you look at Fournette and how he's played in the playoffs throughout his career 4 years ago in New England, when he ran up and down the field for Jacksonville, they tried to carry him to the playoffs, but instead, you know, the quarterback, Bortles, wanted to throw the ball and cost them the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this team, the defense was in place when Brady showed up. And they had, you know, he had nothing to do with the defensive side of the ball. And that's who won the Super Bowl, because when you hold the Kansas City Chiefs scoreless, basically, and you limit them to three field goals, that's scoreless.
Yeah.
That defense, that was already in place when Tom Brady showed up. Tom Brady looked at the talent pool that was in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
That talent pool didn't come with him. He looked at the talent pool, said, this is the best talent I can ever play with in my career.
Yeah, he did his thing. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what happened in Super Bowl 55. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. And talking about Jones, Big C, and Fournette, they had 150 yards running on 28 carries, including Fournette's 27-yard touchdown run. And I'm telling you, I watched the movie Pulp Fiction. I must have seen it about 20 times with the great Sam Jackson doing his thing. And I'm telling you, there's something about that movie. Vin Rames was in it, and I think about this when he told Bruce Willis, "Your butt goes down in the fourth round." And I thought about that as Fournette ran 27 yards and no one touched him. There's a linebacker that kind of watched him run by him. I mean, growing up on the West Coast, I saw a lot of the Raiders play earlier when I was a young boy. I know things are what they are, and money's made the way it's made. But guys, they sell out to win a Super Bowl, you think, unless somebody got to them on the inside. Just an opinion. But I want to ask your thoughts on this too, because I think it's so important when we talk about how a field goal kicker. You know, we talked about Norwood, the wide right, when they were also down in Tampa Big C, and it cost the Giants a chance to beat the New York Giants. Butler kicked a 50-yard field goal, and that took him up to, it made the score 21-9 with about 7 minutes left to go in the game. And then field goal kicking also, how important was that for Kansas City? You never would have thought that Kansas City would only get the production from a field goal kicker. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when your offensive line is not holding up, Charlton, and your receivers are dropping wide open passes, this is what you have to go down to. You put any points on the board that you can. And that's what they were doing, just hoping at some point they could catch a spark offensively and march it all the way into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what Tom Brady also did in the first half. Doesn't have the strongest arm, but he knows how to locate the guys that are open and the guys that want to catch the ball. Like, they wanted to catch it. John Travolta understood. He gave somebody's wife a foot massage in Pulp Fiction. They said, you don't do that. But you also, when you got Brady, he was 80% completion in the first half, which is a record for the Super Bowl. And then he got the 3 touchdowns to go with it also. I got to bring this up because I thought it was important. And you always talk about coordinators. This Super Bowl had 2 African-American coordinators for Tampa, and they happened to dominate the game defensively and offensively. Kansas City had one as far as the enemy. And at some point in time, and maybe this doesn't even matter, but you won't hear much talk. I mean, you're doing it now. And I heard some people say how Bowles called a great game. But Leftwich, Tom Brady became the MVP, throwing for 201 yards. And he had 3 touchdowns. And he didn't have the best numbers, but he made the plays to the guys that caught the ball when it counted. Talk about Leftwich. He's also going to be in Tampa next year. No one's going to hire him either, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, these offensive coordinators, Charlton, have done it all season long, as well as the defensive coordinators. Like I said, Todd Bowles' scenario was, like, you got to look at the last 6 quarters and see what Kansas City's offensive production has been against Todd Bowles. It has basically been non-existent in the last 6 quarters against him. Brian Leftwich has done the same job. You think about Brian Leftwich last year, Charlton. He had a quarterback that passed for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns last year. So that was his first year in working with him. When he brought in Tom Brady this year. Tom Brady had the second most productive year of his professional career this year under Brian Leftwich. So Brian Leftwich, when they want to talk about a quarterback whispers, they want to say about your buddy John Gruden and your buddy John McVay out there in Los Angeles, that their quarterback whispers. Look at what you know Brian Leftwich has done the last 2 years with his 2 starting quarterbacks, Charlton, that have accounted for 9,500 yards passing in the regular season and 70 touchdowns, as well as Eric Bieniemy in the last 2 years. His quarterback has accounted alone, Mr. Mahomes, for what, 4,700 yards, 9,800 yards. 9,800 yards. And 50, make that 82 touchdowns. So when you talk about these 2 black offensive coordinators, what their quarterbacks have accounted for in the last 2 years
amazing.
In working with them. I mean, those numbers are undaunted. But, you know, people say, well, they don't interview well. They coach well.
A lot of boxers don't interview well either, but when they knock you out, they say that guy's a great fighter. It's all fair and love and war. Went over some of the quarterback numbers. Patrick Mahomes, touchdown Patrick Mahomes. He's 26 of 49, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns. He would have had well over 300 yards had some of the receivers decided to hold on to the football. But I feel like my betting friend, that was an inside job. Brady was 21 of 29, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns, and would have had an interception, but the official said, no, that's not an interception, and they called a phantom foul for something. On the tip ball, you can touch the receivers, Big C. So all fair and love and war. Rushing, Hilaire had 9 carries, 64 yards. Fournette, 16 carries for 89 yards. And then receiving, touchdown Travis Kelce, who dropped the ball for one of the first times I've seen right in his hands when they needed on the 3rd down. So he may have been part of what my bookie friend was telling me. And then Gronkowski, 6 catches, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big C, what I saw in Gronk, he took that time off, and I guess he got into the CBD industry to heal his body up. Whatever he and Tom Brady are on, maybe we should all get on some of the Big C. They hook up again. This guy was on vacation doing whatever he wanted to do. He decided to come back, play football, and catch 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to cover somebody for starters, Charlton. When you think about the 2 catches he had for touchdowns, he was wide open. There was not a DB in sight.
Inside job.
So when I look at the scheme that Spagnuolo was putting in defensive coordinator-wise for the Kansas City Chiefs, he just wasn't on his game against Tampa Bay. And so he left a lot on the table. I mean, so when you think about it, I said just like with Todd Bowles the last 6 quarters, you got to look at Spagnuolo the last 6 quarters. They figured out what he does. And they were able to manipulate that Tampa Bay's offense and take advantage of what the Chiefs had on the field defensively.
Leftwich was doing his thing. He's putting his time, but he's still not going to get a job. It's all fair level war because they say he doesn't interview well, and the way they were playing on offense and on defense, I guess he or Bowles don't interview well, if that makes sense to you. I think Bruce Arians says they interview quite just fine. Big C, Bruce Arians, I believe, has the most diverse coaching staff in the NFL. Listen up, Roger Goodell. He didn't do it with the Rooney Rule. He did it by giving guys a chance that he knew could play, and it happened to win them a Super Bowl. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you put the right guys in the right position to win. You put people in place, Charlton, that can identify with your roster. I think that's one of the things that the NFL misses out on when you look at organizations that consistently lose. When you look at the diversity of the roster,
Yeah.
if you have a roster that's 70% African American, you need people that can identify with them, Charlton, understand what they may be going through, what plight they are in life. Because the game is not just played on the field; it's how you approach and keep players healthy mentally.
You know, I think I told you the Big C version of the Rooney Rule for Roger Goodell. He was sitting there with Russell Houdini Wilson, and his wife Sierra, Big C, beautiful wife Sierra, very talented musician, entertainer. I think the Rooney Rule, and you might think it's funny, or you might think it's being flippant. Make somewhat of the Rooney Rule match the composite of players in the league. If you woke up this morning and you saw 3 white coaches in the NFL, the media would make it a story every single day. Why only 3 white coaches in the NFL? Could you imagine just 3 white coaches in the NFL? And that would not be upsetting because they only make up 25% of the league. So how does the makeup ethically in Black History Month of people who make up 25% of the league, how do they get about 90% of the jobs? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I wouldn't even care if it was that low, Charlton, but I'd like for it to be at least 50-50.
Yeah.
If half the coaches in the NFL were African Americans and half the coaches in the NFL were white, we're going to really see who can put the metal to the pedal, Charlton, at that point.
Yeah.
Because if you got half the league that's African American, and those African Americans are winning 75% of the games in the league, Charlton, the league really has to address itself at that point. So what have we been doing wrong for a long time?
Yeah.
We've been hiring these white guys because they talk well to us. They'll listen to the rhetoric that we use in front of them and won't look down on us because of it.
Yeah.
And they'll accept anything negative we have to say about black people.
Yeah.
And so you put a large number of black coaches out there, Charlton, and they have winning percentages. I mean, look at the few black coaches that have been in the NFL that have gone to the Super Bowl. We've had 3 black coaches, head coaches, that have been in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's a very high percentage of the number of black coaches that have ever been in the league.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so when you look at things from that aspect, there is a fear factor when you start hiring black people and they're successful. Just like the fear of not having black quarterbacks in the NFL for decades. Saying, well, they weren't salient enough to understand and run an offense. They didn't have the smarts. But yet they start winning. And it's like, well, we got to find other reasons why not to have them back there playing quarterback.
Yeah.
And so you think about how long that fight was to get blacks to play quarterback in the NFL. And they didn't want to turn over that position because that was the one position that was held out for the white guy because he was supposed to be the smartest guy on the field. Not only that, the second toughest position, Charlton, for blacks to take over in the NFL was the center position.
Yeah. Because
he was the quarterback of the line. And so for years, it was hard to find a black center in the NFL. They matriculated in. We've had a few. We got a couple of them in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But once that black center position started to break down, now the next level is coach, Charlton.
Yeah.
To get to the black coaches, you have to have a point in the NFL. I think at the starting opening day of this season, we had 11 black quarterbacks to start.
Yeah.
I'm waiting on the day that we can get a dozen black coaches in the NFL to be head coaches on opening day.
Yeah. Well, it's about equality and opportunity, and I do appreciate that we have the dialogue. I appreciate James Brown for CBS having just the decency to just tell the truth. And he said that it's a shame what the NFL has done for African-American, coaches and the chances for interviews. But I appreciate James Brown. Maybe James Brown is listening to Big C Sports. You don't get fired for telling the truth. Just a side note, Big C, I think there's a guy by the name of Lou Dobbs. He is on Fox News, and they're being sued by somebody for like $2.7 billion. Would you believe they pulled him off the air? Now, before you even answer that question, I'm going to credit you with something you said. Maybe you don't remember you said it. But you said about, I want to say right around a month ago, when we were dealing with the election, you were saying the FCC owns all the rules of TV and cable, and they should be able to fine people who disseminate false news. Don't just say we fact-checked it and they were wrong and they wrote a little, one sentence redaction, hey, we made a mistake on this story. They should be held culpable the same way an airline pilot would be held culpable if they flew 3,000 feet across the ocean and landed at the wrong city or on the wrong country. They wouldn't just say, hey, we made a mistake. Kick those guys off the air, find those media companies that are disseminating false information, or sue them, and would you believe what you said come true, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's the Dominion voting machine that sued Fox as well as some Trump backers, his lawyers, for $2.7 billion. And, Fox took him off the TV, but it does not exonerate them, Charlton, from being a part of the lawsuit.
Yeah.
They also have 3 other Fox announcers that are part of that lawsuit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's all controlled by the FCC, Charlton. And when you simulate false information in the news, you should be accountable for it.
Yeah.
That means that you should be sanctioned. And that comes down to the FCC, Charlton, until they start doing that. But it's white bureaucrats policing white bureaucrats.
Yeah, but it did happen. And if people want to know how to get the knuckleheads out of business, that's why we say fact check what we say. If we're wrong, we'll know that. If we're wrong all the time, then why would you listen to us? And so I'm glad that they did that. I want to talk about a little bit of a side note. We talk about my friend that's in the down in Las Vegas, does the betting, and there's a furniture store owner by the name of Gematria Mac, and he betted $3.46 million on underdog Tampa Bay Buccaneers to cover the 3.5-point Super Bowl spread. A Houston furniture store owner, Big C, who's known for making giant sports bets, maybe he knows something that we don't know, has placed the largest wager on Super Bowl 55 so far. It was $3.46 million, the underdog Tampa Bay, and I think he won about $2.72 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he knew he had a hunch, Charlton. But, when they place bets like this, it's an insurance policy for a deal that he's doing, because everybody who purchased a mattress from his store during a certain time frame was getting a free mattress if Tampa Bay won the game.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to be sleeping free. Those mattresses cost about $3,000, Charlton. So those are going to be sleeping free for the next decade.
Yeah, it's all fair. It's all fair and love and war, Big Z. Speaking of sleeping free, a bettor in New Jersey put down $3,000 on touchdown Patrick Mahomes that he would throw for 0 touchdowns and 15-1 in the Super Bowl. Think about it, Big Z. He had 2 interceptions. He won a payout of just $48,000, but hey, I'll take it, Big Z. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's not a bad payday. I mean, it seemed like a couple times that Mahomes would get his touchdown.
Yep.
But in the end, Charlton, it came down to 2 interceptions, and that last one was in the end zone, which should have been a touchdown. He's walking away with a smooth $48,000 today.
Yeah, $48,000 won't hurt you. It's all fair. Depending on what size mattress you have to put $48,000 in nickels and dimes, it's all fair and love and war. NFL, Levante David, Devin White, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, they were bringing it the whole game, and that's why the Kansas City Chiefs offense was ineffective, even though my friend from Las Vegas disagrees, but they did a good job of the game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the speed possessed in the linebacking core for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Charlton, there was never an easy moment for the Kansas City Chiefs offense, whether you were a receiver, running back, or quarterback.
Yeah.
You did not have free releases. There were not gaping holes for you to run through, Charlton. And as a quarterback, you had no time in the pocket. You think about Jason Pierre-Paul. This was his 7th playoff game, Charlton. He's never lost one.
Yeah.
He is 7-0 in the playoffs. So, I mean, he's on a pretty good run.
Yeah, I want to take you back to something that you brought to my mind, and I thought about it in the game, and I thought, well, that's odd. But, my friend from Las Vegas told me about the inside job that went on the biggest show in the universe, in my opinion. It's not my opinion. I'm just being real, talk about what I heard. When Chris Jones had a slap on a player from Tampa, he was just a retaliatory slap. It wasn't like he did it first. And you saw it on the video. He was pushing back, retaliating. It was a dumb thing to do because it was on a 3rd down. I think it was a 3rd and 8, and it gave them a 1st down. So that was foolish to do. But you got the NFL's marquee quarterback in touchdown Patrick Mahomes. This happened to him, Big C. He was sacked, and I know I saw Dominican Sue punch the side of his helmet. I don't know if it was a closed fist, but you're not supposed to touch the helmet of a quarterback, and they put that same penalty, I think, on Jones when the Patriots played Kansas City back in Kansas City a couple years ago, and that gave a 15-yard personal foul penalty against Kansas City. It also gave Brady and the Patriots a 1st down. When Mahomes was sacked and he was punched in the side of the helmet by Dominican Sue, that would have been a 1st down, and they did not call it, and everybody in the universe saw it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he did it twice, Charlton, to Patrick Mahomes, and the officials were looking at it both times, and did not throw the flag. I mean, there was some home cooking, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it was home cooking. And I know that some people don't believe in home cooking, but home cooking happens. It's a real deal, and you just want to make sure you don't burn your food. Big C's Black History Month, 100 years ago, the Black Wall Street, where it was burned down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There were several Black Wall Streets. There was one in California as well, and one in Carolina that was also burned down by mobs, and even some law enforcement burned it down. People can Google it. But I want to take this month, and I want to just ask people to visit Black History exhibits online. You have virtual exhibits, Big C. They offer a chance to keep up with activism at home during the month of celebrating Black history. February's Black History Month, national recognition of crucial existence of Black communities of our country's tarnished history, Big C. If you're not already educating yourself about the Black achievements and the injustices the community has faced year-round this month, it's time to do so. Even if you're stuck inside, that's even less of an excuse to not do it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everybody has time during this pandemic. The school children, adults, to sit down as you're surfing the internet. Look at Black History. It's more than just a month. I mean, we have a month dedicated to it, but it's more than as a month.
Yeah.
Because Black history resonates 365 days out of the year.
Yeah, it does. And I know, and again, I want to go back to something that James Brown did on CBS right before the Super Bowl. He was talking about what the league can do to foster equality, and he had a conversation with Roger Goodell. And it doesn't mean that we're going to solve a 400-year problem or 402-year problem in 4 days or 365 days, but it sure is great to have that conversation, and I really appreciate it. I want to just bring something up. When people talk about the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech, looking at his prepared speech at the March on Washington, it was Dr. King that balked when he reached a mouthful of a sentence. It was about, so today let us go back to our communities as members of the International Association for the Advancement of Creative Dissatisfaction, Big C, instead of he transformed into a speech sermon, and he started speaking from his higher self. And he spoke, not some people say coming from the cuff, but he was just being honest. And I really appreciate what James Brown did yesterday, because with Roger Goodell, I appreciate Roger Goodell. There's no right or wrong way to have a conversation that could be painful. But isn't it amazing, since the "I Have a Dream" speech, we're looking at a $15 billion industry known the NFL, and we're still asking for equal opportunity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we're going to ask for equal opportunity the rest of our lives, Charlton. I mean, they gave, think about this. A couple of years ago, they gave us President Obama to toy around with, okay?
Yeah.
Look at what we had to live with for 4 years after President Obama. They took us further back after President Obama than we had ever achieved. So you think about that. Now we have Joe Biden. Will we have the same scenario that we had with President Obama, or will we move forward even more? That's the biggest questions I look at.
Yeah.
I understand the speech of 63, but I can go back to the election of 2008 when we got President Obama.
Yeah.
But I can also go to the election of 2016 when we got the Cheeto.
Yeah.
And I mean, the orange wave, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And look how America degressed from that. Now with Joe Biden, we got to fight to get back to where we even were with President Obama.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You got to fight, just like we saw the Super Bowl. Both sides fight whenever there's opposition. There's good and bad in people.
But we shouldn't have to fight. In 2021, America should be a country of equality, of opportunity, not a country of fight. The fight was the insurrection at the Capitol. That's what fighting is.
Yeah.
Nobody in America should be at that level, Charlton. We should not have disagreements in this society in 2021.
Yeah.
When we think about the ugly history of America, before there was internet and television, and now that we have the internet and television, the ugly presence that have always been in America has gotten even louder. We should not have to fight. That's not a word that should be in the American vocabulary as far as achieving. There should be, we talk about equality. James Brown having a conversation with Roger Goodell, it's like you having a conversation with your son and saying, hey, I want you to go out there and start this corporation that's worth $1 billion, and I want it done next year.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the same thing. James Brown is not having a conversation with the owners. You got to understand, Roger Goodell is just a figurehead. He is a puppet of 32 strings. There are 32 strings that make the say-sos of what Roger Goodell can and cannot say. Don't think he's going out there speaking autonomously. No, he is not. Every word that he speaks is carefully structured so that he doesn't piss anybody off that writes out his paycheck.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much money he makes, because he makes it for the NFL, he is still a servant of the owners.
Yeah, I thought they would have had. I thought they would have had Jim Nantz do the talk about equality, because he's white and the white owners might listen to Jim Nantz more than James Brown. But it's all fair and level war. Juneteenth, Big Z, when a general announced in Texas that slaves were free, had no idea that in establishing the Union Army's authority over the people of Texas, he was also establishing the basis for a holiday called Juneteenth. And today, that's the most popular annual celebration of the emancipation from slavery in the United States of America. We know the country has a lot of ills to overcome, and we will overcome by having those conversations of dialogue, black and white. It's not going to be easy, but things in life are not easy. But sometimes they're always necessary. So I appreciate with the platform of Big C Sports that we do it all the time, and we don't wait for somebody to tell us, well, you think people want to hear that? I just ask people to Google it so we can have the chance to form a more perfect union. I want to bounce back to the NFL real quick and then get your opinion on something. When we talk about the NFL put in rules that teams cannot contact players prior to a certain date before the start of free agency, Big C, why can't the NFL put in a rule that a team cannot start interviewing head coach positions until after a Super Bowl, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, Charlton, that's something that the NFL should seriously consider. I mean, you think about it. We got 3 African-American offensive coordinators that, according to current league rules, you cannot talk to a coach while a team is in playoffs,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
So you got 3 black offensive and defensive coordinators that never had an opportunity to interview because their teams were in the Super Bowl. They were punished for being successful. Yet they can go out and hire these coordinators, Charlton, whose teams are losers, and bring them in and make them head coaches because they're white.
Yeah.
If you're black and you're successful as an understudy in the NFL, you're punished. So the NFL should seriously consider that. I mean, the NFL is always talking about publicity and being in the spotlight. If the NFL enacted this rule, the NFL would control sports television for at least another month, Charlton, after the Super Bowl. You had, 7 positions open this year, 6 positions?
Yeah.
Think about the hiring process you got to go through for 3 to 4 weeks to get those positions filled, Charlton. And you're going to control television because not only that, all the networks are going to cover it, Charlton. This guy is interviewing.
Yeah.
The thoughts are this guy is going to get the job. But at least these black successful coordinators would be in the hunt for one of these positions, Charlton, and they wouldn't be left out because you go out, you win the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have 2 coordinators that did not get an opportunity to interview for head coaching positions.
Yeah.
And they're winners. Last year, Eric Bieniemy, no one would interview him during the playoffs because the Chiefs were still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And ultimately in the Super Bowl. So you had these 3 coordinators that watch less qualified individuals get jobs. Less qualified people who've been in positions less than they have. Guys that were just quarterback coaches get head coaching jobs in the NFL. They weren't even offensive coordinators. They were just quarterback coaches.
Yeah.
So when you think about the injustice that's done, the NFL could easily implement that rule. If a team can get fined, as they call tampering, for talking to a player before free agency begins, you can do the same thing. If you start talking to coaches before the Super Bowl, you lose your number 1 draft pick. Nobody would interview anyone before the Super Bowl is over.
That's interesting. You know how Lou Dobbs got Fox News in trouble, and they're being sued for $2.7 billion, and Fox kicked them off the air because it cost them money. I told you, my grandfather back in the day told me a lot of white men fear death and losing money, and they'll do a lot of things to avoid that. Not just white men, but predominantly they're the ones who fear of death and losing money. The NFL, if they have to open their books and really show what they have, if they violate hiring practices and employment, maybe lose their 501(c)(3) status, Big C, maybe that would help. But it's not about being nice. And if you're nice to me, then we'll give people equal opportunity. They're colluding. In colluding, they do it because that's how good old boys give their friends work. I hardly know any white men in management that did not get a friend to give them a phone call and say, we have an opening, do you want it? And I mean, from the high executive, white-collar jobs to even blue-collar jobs, most of the guys that I know, that's how they get work, not by sending in 50 resumes. And even if they don't, when they show up, they look like the hiring manager for the most part, and that's a fact. So in order to ferret out equality, you got to have some penalties, and if you're going to start lying, then maybe you do get sued for $2.7 million. Thank you, Lou Dobbs, for showing that you have no integrity. And now everyone in the universe knows that Fox News is garbage news, and they're taking guys off the air because of money. It's all fair and love and war. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the winners of Super Bowl 55. Big C, we have Pirates. I told you when Pirates come to town, sometimes they mean no good. A 31-9 win over the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And some people do believe it was an inside job. And I can't say I confirm or deny that, Big C, but people can Google some of the things that happened. Congratulations to everybody that got through NFL COVID-19 season. It was tough on a lot of people, but they did crown a champion. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this boy's universe?
Well, Charleston, after yesterday's Super Bowl game, I got to quote the late, great poet Marvin Gaye. You got to give it up to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
yeah.
the 2021 NFL World Champ.
Yeah.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. You are world champs every day.
You are world champs every day. Everybody, rise and shine. And if you lost money, don't jump in the lake. You can rise and shine everybody through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mom always says, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.